Hey, everybody, this is Mark Woodling with Roofstock. Thanks for joining the Remote Real Estate Investor Podcast. Today, we have Daniel David, who's in Lexington, Kentucky. He's one of our certified agents, and he's going to give us some insights about what's happening in the market. So let's go ahead and get Daniel on. Welcome, Daniel, to the Remote Real Estate Investor.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So are you in Lexington today?
I am, in the Lexington, Kentucky area. Actually born in this area, grew up here, graduated high school from here, but then I ended up joining the Army back in '98. So shout out to any Army vets that are, listening to the podcast. So spent 3 years in Heidelberg, Germany, loved it. If I could go back there, I would go back there immediately. Came back, started being a wedding DJ, believe it or not. So I'm used to talking on the mic, used to talking in front of crowds and, engaging and making things a lot of fun. So hopefully we'll be able to make some fun stuff here today. And then, of course, doing weddings is not just a one-day event. There's the planning sessions, you have the rehearsal, you've got the wedding, and then you've got to find time to go promote your business. Well, during this time, my son happened to be in kindergarten, and he's like, "Dad, can you come spend some time with me? Pick me up from school today." And I was like, "I can't. I have a meeting." And then he's like, "Well, that's okay. You can come pick me up on Friday." I was like, "No, I got to go to the rehearsal." And then Sunday, was the bridal show to generate more business. And he was like, "Dad, when are you going to stay home and spend some time with me?" And I was like, that was the dagger that if I could have quit that day, I knew I would have. So I knew some things needed to change. And that's what got me involved in real estate. So ended up going with a large national brand, my first right out of the gates with KW, Keller Williams. And my second month in the business, I actually listed 26 homes. A lot of people thought that, look, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're doing. And then once I listed those 26 homes, those same people were like, okay, so maybe you do know what you're doing just a little bit. So ended up getting into coaching, training, mentoring, and then had the opportunity to join EXP where I coach, train, and mentor. We've got about 1,000 in our group across 38 states, 4 provinces in Canada, Mexico and Portugal and Puerto Rico as well. And so we've got tools, models, and systems and things like that. But I've always been a real estate investor. I'm an investor agent, so I love talking the numbers and, talking about cap rates and all the good stuff that most people just don't get.
That's awesome. I've heard a lot of really good things with eXp Realty these days where they're bringing on more investor-centric agents that really know how to talk numbers versus, selling somebody an owner-occupied home. So that's great that you've made your way over there. And I also hear you're a real estate coach. So maybe give us a little background on how you've been coaching, whether it's buyers or is it families? Like, tell us about, that experience.
Well, it kind of covers a vast range. So if you're working with buyers, there's certain things that you're looking for that, can save time. If you're looking, it doesn't matter whether you're buying real estate to invest or you're buying for your personal reasons. One of the best things can do if you're not paying cash is make sure you have your financing in order first. This is going to save you so much time on the back end and also on the front end because when you are pre-approved and you've got all your ducks in a row, it's just like you've got cash in hand. So when we find something, we can move rather quickly. When you're looking to invest in real estate, one of the best first investments that I can give advice is buy a duplex, especially if, you're just starting out in life. Maybe you just graduated high school, you've got, roommates and things like that. It's amazing how much profit you can make if you can buy a duplex, live in one side, and then rent out the other. Basically, when you're renting out the other, they're making your mortgage payment. And then, once you finish school, move out, take advantage of this IRS rule that the government has. It's the 3-5 rule. So if it's been your primary residence for 3 of the last 5 years, you can actually claim that still as your personal residence and not pay capital gains tax on that. So at the end of year 3, look to sell that thing off, cash out, and now you've got a big, nice cash portfolio to start going into future investment.
Well, that's what's so interesting about today with, all the pandemic is that people are moving or are much more mobile. So they may be moving from California and trying to find a market like Lexington, Kentucky, and finding that the price point is just so affordable where they can pick up these properties for, nothing compared to what they're paying back home. So yeah, house hacking, that's what they call that little strategy. But well, I would love to hear more about the coaching as we go through, because, the reason why I ask is, do you coach more individuals or families? To me, I bet you end up as a life coach because, if there's 2 parties to any decision, you're going to have to play mediator here and there. So, would love to, who is your typical client type? So maybe give us a little background there.
I love working with investors. It's your typical agent does not understand how to work with investors. They're more concerned about, hey, look at the nice decor in the house. Oh, did you see that this has a garage? And an investor's like, okay, so tell me the cap rate. What's the cash flow on this? What's the numbers look like? And so, if the numbers make sense, then we can look at the house. And, if it has nice aesthetics, that's a plus. But, let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the meat and potatoes. Let's dive into it. And so, back in 2015, I actually started a real estate investors group and we can find it on meetup.com. And no, that is not a hookup site, just so you know. So, we've got currently over 500 members, like 556 last time I checked. And, we talk about how to buy, sell, and invest, and even, the fix and flips. Lexington is a perfect market if you're looking to buy and hold. Not so much on the fix and flips because everybody's looking to fix and flip. And those are few and far between, and it's like sharks circling. And they just all pounce and they end up driving up the profit to where there's no meat on the bone at the end of the day. So, buy and hold is like the best strategy that I've found that works really well because Lexington has some great numbers for rents compared to prices. And, you mentioned like back home or out west where, 300,000 won't even buy you the front door. Here in Kentucky, 300,000 will get you a pretty nice place with a good cash return on investment.
No, that's great intel and exactly what we want to dig deeper into. So let's go into Lexington and let's actually give people a little tour that may not be so familiar with it. So what I know is that it's the second most populated city in Kentucky. I think that's always a big thing that most people don't recognize. It's the horse capital of the world. So I think that's a pretty big deal.
We love our horses.
Maybe known for a little bourbon and some other activities, that around fine tastings and, good things like that. And then, of course, the University of Kentucky Wildcats. So maybe why don't you give us a little tour of the city and go through anything that people may know or may not know and, give us your perspective on it.
Okay. So Lexington is, believe it or not, one of, it's growing. We like to be a little conservative on our growth as compared to some of the other cities. It's definitely like an old money town. So you've got horse racing for those horse enthusiasts. You mentioned the bourbon. Some of the best bourbon in the world is produced right here in our backyard. So we've got a whole bourbon distillery trail that, if you're ever in Kentucky, I recommend you go check out the Bourbon Trail. We do have the University of Kentucky, and that is what kind of anchors Lexington. And then that's also followed by the medical industry. We have some of the top medical physicians and things like that in the world are right here in Kentucky. And that's not a well-known fact. One of the cardiology departments and things like that, we strive for success there. We've also got, for those that like some companies that you may have heard of. We've got Amazon. We've got Lexmark is anchored right here. And then if you've ever eaten at Fazoli's, Fazoli's was founded right here in Lexington, Kentucky. So, all some great companies with opportunities and growth for future investments and things like that.
So what I've been reading about is just the low overall cost of doing business out there. So it's very attractive. I think it's a competitive tax environment for companies to move to. So, what are some of the companies you would say that are making a splash right now? Are there any technology companies or companies that are maybe building the next great facility that they're looking to move to out in the Lexington area?
There's plenty of opportunity for those companies that want to take advantage of those industries. Metronet kind of installed their fiber optic network throughout the area, so now we get a true gigabit up and down. That opened up a ton of opportunity, and we've had some companies that are taking advantage of those opportunities, and then other companies that are kind of like, well, I'm not sure about this whole fiber optics thing. So there's great opportunity to hop in on the technology side. Lexmark, they produce some of the best printers in the world. They are, anchored here, so they're taking advantage of some of those opportunities. And then, you've got a lot of law firms here in Kentucky. You also have a lot of medical opportunities. So if you're in the legal or medical industry, Kentucky especially Lexington, Kentucky is a great spot. We are considered a retirement town. So if you're looking to retire, and I think Money Magazine has had us consistently in the top 20 since like 2005, which is just insane. So we have some great nightlife, and then some great little off the beat restaurants. So if you want to get away from those chain restaurants, we have some great local eateries here that would rival some of the great cuisine that you're probably used to experiencing.
That's awesome. Well, I want to dive a little bit further into the quality of life in a second, but you touched on it for a second, the gigabit city. That's a big deal, or gigabyte. I don't know which one you pronounce it, but that's a big deal. There's only a handful of cities around the country that have the entire city infrastructure set up to have a gigabyte download speed. So, so Metronet is the name of the company. And is there headquarters in the area as well, or is that just their presence?
They have some of the companies, and then because they've already set up that infrastructure here in Lexington, they're expanding to the surrounding cities and bringing that in as well. So that is a huge benefit, especially if you're looking to invest, because I know tenants are looking for like that high-speed internet to be able to stream and do things like that. So it used to be that we just had Spectrum, cable, and that was it. That was like the fastest internet that you could find, which, drove prices up. And now that Metronet has come in, and it's been a game changer. And so a lot of those companies that had that, kind of monopoly have had to rethink what they're doing, because so many customers now have choices. Now, it used to be that everybody had a landline phone. Well, now everyone has a cell phone, so there's no need for a landline phone anymore. So your older population, they're still used to having that landline. Your younger population, it's like, nope, I'm completely mobile. I don't want to be tied to one spot, which makes, investing in Lexington a great opportunity.
Sure. And so between all the colleges around town, you have this, gigabyte city or gigabit. And what I've been reading about is the millennial population that's really attracted to the area. I think it's because it's post-college, but also if you have the technology and you have this future thought on how to keep some of the youth there in come the restaurants, because these are the people with the disposable income. So what do you see in terms of like the city makeup? I heard a little bit about it being a great place for retirees, but when you see or dealing with even local buyers, who is the buyer that you're working more closely with, or who's the renter that you may be working with looking to rent a property?
Well, usually when you first come out of college, you've got that massive student loan debt. And so mortgage companies take that into consideration. Now, they are, at least here locally, if you're in a certain field, they will forgive your student loans and not count that into your loan, which is a great benefit for buyers and sellers have that opportunity as well. For your renters that, whatever reason you can't get qualified, Lexington does have, some pretty competitive rent rates. You can look anywhere from like for a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath, probably looking at, around that 1,000 to 1,200 range. Where if you get on the outskirts, that's probably closer to like 900 to 1,000.
Wow.
And you're still close enough to where you can commute. When I think of commute, I think anything 15 minutes or less is, you're right there.
That's incredible. So you have this younger set of, let's call it the millennial generation. And next thing you know, we have Gen Z coming around the corner. What I've been reading as well is that, this is one of the most highly educated postgraduate groups in the entire country. So I saw that 42.9% of the population 25 years or older has at least a bachelor's degree, and 18.6% has a graduate or a professional degree, which is the 11th highest. Ranking Lexington the 11th most highly educated city in the country. That's incredible. Yes. Wow. So the colleges are keeping the renters around, or whomever may be buying as well, but they're staying around. So they don't just graduate and then take off for the big city. It sounds like they're sticking around and spending their disposable income there.
Yeah, and a lot of that ties back to we're a friendly city. We're not like all up in your business, but when you talk to us, we're cordial. We're generally interested when you're trying to carry on a conversation with us. We're not trying to just like turn up our nose and say, see ya. Everyone's helpful and very supportive. And I think that drives a lot into why you're seeing a lot of retention when students graduate from UK. So we also have Transylvania University, which, is not on the same level as UK, as far as like student-wise population, but academically, they, like you said, they rival pretty much anyone in the nation. So we have a lot of educated people that choose to remain here just for the sake of there's opportunity, and we're growing. We're still, expanding. Lexington has not reached its full potential yet. And so there's plenty of opportunity for growth, and that's what makes it attractive to a lot of people.
Well, that's great. Well, we'll put some show notes and links into the podcast, but there's locateinlexington.com. That's where I got a lot of my information. It's the economic development group out of Lexington, or typically it's the Chamber of Commerce that puts out a lot of great content. So I highly advise anybody to go check that out and study some more of those statistics. But let's get into the actual, let's get into the micro economics of this and start talking about what little pockets of Lexington that you're really focused on. So as a kind of a preface, Daniel is the one that is a part of a certified agent network at Roofstock. So he's actually underwriting a lot of the properties from the MLS and then posting them to Roofstock. So he comes up and estimates if it's vacant, a rent amount, as well as potential rehab. So maybe Daniel, give us a little idea about when you're going through and looking at properties, what are you looking for that you would consider as a good investment property? And maybe walk us through some of the pockets around Lexington and talk about whether it's schools that are the driver or areas that are more cap rate focused, where you can get the better return on your
Yeah.
investment. So give us a little intel there.
Well, so let's talk about the sweet spots because I love talking about the sweet spots. So in Lexington, one of the hottest areas is the Kenwick subdivision area. That's 40502 on the zip code. Anything that you can pick up there, that is increasing in value. So just to give you an idea, like what we saw last year compared to this year, numbers are up about 20% just in that area alone, which is just crazy. So Lexington as a whole, we had about 1.9 months of inventory last year. That has unfortunately decreased. It's like 1.3 months of inventory right now, which, not saying you can't find deals, because a lot of investors think, oh, well, you can't find deals on the multiple listing service. Well, that's where I get a lot of my deals. If you know what you're looking for and you know what you're doing, you can find cap rates as high as like 9+% on properties that are on the multiple listing. And I find those all the time and upload those for you on Roofstock. So, what I've been experiencing since I have joined Roofstock, I'm actually, we're writing about an offer per day, right? So it's just crazy, and there's a reason that a lot of investors are targeting, and it boils back to all of the things that we have discussed throughout the podcast.
That's great. So maybe walk us through a few other areas, or how do you kind of divide the lines? Is it highways that are dividing? Is it, other areas that kind of separate where some of the better schools are? Or give us an idea about how you would kind of generally categorize that.
We do have some schools that, outperform others. As a real estate agent, I am kind of bound by this no discrepancy rule kind of things. But Lexington, if you think about it, Lexington as itself is, if you think of a wagon wheel, and then each spoke points to the center. So the center is downtown. We have this road called New Circle Road, or Circle 4. It makes up the outliers of Lexington, and then each exit points as a spoke, and it all focuses towards downtown. And then we have now started to take that wagon wheel, and now we're putting another wheel around that, where we're getting into some of the other areas that have direct access to, like I-64, I-75, and we've noticed some rapid growth in those areas as well. That's out in the Hamburg area. Also, we've just built a new high school, Frederick Douglass High School. That has drawn a lot of investors into that area. And then, because we have UK, there are some opportunities to invest in the UK student area, where you will constantly have an influx of students. You'll never run out of opportunity there. Most of those are more than 4 units, though. So if you're interested in that, get with me. I'm sure we'll go over my contact information later on, and we can discuss those opportunities.
That's great. That's great. So, when you're underwriting these properties in general, is there a certain cap rate that you're really looking for? Because I know, like you said, the price points, can be a bit higher in some of the areas, but it sounds like your taxes also are not nearly as high as what you'd experience in areas like Texas, where I am. So what is the price point and expectations that buyers should expect, in terms of maybe like something between $100,000 and $150,000? What should a cap rate look like? And then 150 to 200 and so forth.
Most of the tax rate in Fayette County is 1.278%. So you take that into consideration, which puts, if you're buying a property at like 100,000, you're right at about 200 a month or something like that, which equates to 2,400 a year. Or if you go lower, then of course that varies. Your cap rates, my sweet spot is, if I can find anything 9 plus, I'm golden. But if I can get it between that 7 to 9%, I know most investors will, bite on that.
That's fantastic. Wow. Yeah, those are numbers that you really don't see in some of the major, we would call like tier one cities. But as you get into these secondary markets where you have less competition and there is a little bit more available inventory, it doesn't sound like there's much. So you need to act quickly. But there's some markets where, properties aren't on MLS for more than 4 to 6 hours and then they're snapped up. So it sounds like you have a little bit of breathing room, but not a whole lot of time to react.
No. And so there is a great city right outside of Lexington. It's Richmond. It's about 20 minutes away. It's another college town. It's got Eastern Kentucky University as their EKU. And you would be surprised on a $125,000 property. You want to take a guess at what the taxes are per year?
No, tell me.
$25.
Well, what aren't you getting for $25 though? That's what concerns me.
Well, it makes a great opportunity for some investments. I actually have put a couple of those up on Roofstock, so you can check those out. And the cap rates on those, I think one of those is like 14%. So
wow,
it's definitely worth at least checking out.
So is it just an unincorporated town where they're not paying, the local city taxes, or what makes it such a steal?
It's just county taxes, not so much on the city end. Mm-hmm. And the county taxes are like 0.099321 or something like that. It's some absurd tax rate. And I was like, no, this can't be real. But I got on the Property Value Administration, which investors, if you're not checking your PVA rates, you need to go check those out prior to on any potential investment. That's a added bonus tip there.
And PVA stands for what?
Property Value Administration.
Okay.
And basically, they're the city elected officials that go around and they collect the taxes for the city on the property. A lot of people think, well, it's the sheriff's office that does that. Well, yes, they go out and they serve the tax notice, but it's all paid to the county or to the city. And so when I said there's some great opportunity to invest in properties, not just in Lexington, but also the outskirts, Richmond is one of those areas that it's definitely worth checking out.
Very cool. So we've touched on a lot of the highlights, and I always think it's good to go through and really put a spotlight on the city, some of the great things. Okay. Tell us about the negative aspects. And, I don't want to beat up on Lexington too much, but this is where I want you to be very forward with us. Are there any common issues that you see in most of the properties, that are investment properties that somebody may acquire? Well, what are the things that investors should be looking out for and keeping their guards up on?
I would say a lot of it has to do with whatever PM you're using, and PM for property management, just making sure that they're properly vetting the tenants. Because, it's just like any industry. Every industry has their bad apples, and some do not do as thorough a job as others. So, just making sure that you properly evaluate your clientele. If you're charging, $5.95 for rent, that there's probably going to be some. I'm not saying that it will always be the case, but we know more oftentimes than not, the lower the rent rolls, the poor condition that they leave the property in when they leave. And that's not every single tenant, but the majority do, because it's not their place. They don't care for it the same way. So we're not putting granite countertops when we go in to those facilities. But, a nice Formica countertop. A lot of times people think, oh, well, I have to go in, I have to gut this place. And believe me, I made the same mistake when I invested in my first property. After, having multiple properties, now it's just about, hey, what can I do? Go in, buy it low. Let's repaint the cabinets, refinish them. Let's put some new doorknobs or, hardware on the cabinets. Let's change out the doorknobs, put some decent doorknobs. put some LED light fixtures in it, then clean up the curb appeal. Then, okay, now we can get that reappraised. It will 9 times out of 10 appraise for even higher than what you originally purchased for. Let's refi that, pull our initial money back out with our repair money, use that money to go buy our next investment and keep growing the portfolio that way. But answering, getting back to your question, and I know we kind of went off the tangent on that one. So tenant mixture, we do have Section 8. We do have a need for, community housing and, those needs. We do have some landlords that, for whatever reason, they, COVID kind of hit them a little hard, and maybe their tenants didn't pay rent, which we know landlords experience that all across the country. So, we didn't experience that much here in Lexington, but we did have a few that they stiffed the rent. And then, when the moratorium got lifted, then they just bolted rather than face the eviction, which, they got to live in it free for about a year. So they did, kind of do some damage. They didn't really take care of the place. Nothing like major, but, cosmetic wise, they, they didn't take care of it like they should. So, a couple of drywall patches, some new paint, maybe some new carpet, and then you're out the door. Or, in mine, I don't even use carpet anymore. I go completely vinyl, and that's what I'm rolling with.
Sure. Well, it sounds like there may be some tired landlords coming to market in the near future, because that is quite a blow to take, and not have income coming in, but still having to pay your mortgage. So yeah, that's always the risk that you take. Now, I have two, I think, really good questions that I want to jump into as well. Is when you get an inspection, and in Lexington, you may say, Mark, there's just one thing that you will see time and time again that falls on that inspection report, but don't freak out. Like, let's not jump to conclusions and say, oh, I'm out. What are those things that a buyer should expect in Lexington that is just going to be common, and something that's going to be easy to remedy versus a deal killer?
Okay. So inspectors love to talk about drainage issues and the effects of groundwater on the foundation. And they'll go on for like 3 pages in the report talking about all these potential damages that could occur if left untreated. What that means is that on the downspouts, you need to go to Lowe's. You need to get one of those black hoses to attach the downspout to divert the groundwater away from the house. That's about a $15 fix per downspout. But they will. But if you just read the report and you're not talking to an investor savvy agent, they will have you convinced that this home needs hundreds of thousands of dollars in repair, or tens of thousands. Almost as much as it costs to build the place, and that's certainly not the case.
Yeah. And I think what we're all experiencing right now, we've had a little more rainfall than normal. So I think it's good for any investor to check even their primary homes and make sure that water is going away from the property. Because in the South, especially, the grounds may dry up. Like in Texas, we have clay. So, when it gets really hot and you don't have the right moisture down there, that's when the foundation issues come about. So yeah, I do agree. You just, got to reroute the water.
Now, I will mention that we do have some homes here in Kentucky that were built and they have some knob and tube wiring. So it's rare to find those, but some of those older homes, like I mentioned in the Kenwick subdivision, some of the older homes there, they're full of knob and tube wiring that are still active. And you're not supposed to splice into those, but a lot of homeowners have spliced into that. So make sure that you look for that on the inspection report.
That's great. Well, I think just knowing what's common and what to look for is big. And then when you get the inspection report, maybe tell us a little bit about how you interact with the buyer at that point. So when the inspection comes back, Roofstock's helping pay for that in order for a buyer to get the Roofstock guarantees. How do you like to go through an inspection report with your buyers?
So we just look at it line by line, and I'll ask them, hey, what are your concerns over this section? Let's talk about this. Then after we talk about the whole report, I'll ask them, okay, so what's the deal breakers? Because we can't ask for every single thing. This is not a punch list. What's your top 5 deal breakers on this? Okay, so out of those 5, what's your top 3? So if I can narrow it down to like 1, 2, or 3 that, okay, we can have those items requested as repairs, and then, okay, these would be nice to have, but I'm okay if they don't do those, then let's submit that and see where we land. I'm all about trying to keep everybody on the same team, which I do, bring the other side in. I don't look at it as it's like us versus them. I'm like, no, we're all involved here. If we can make this work financially, then hey, it's a great investment. It's a great opportunity. If we can't work it, okay, well then obviously we got to kill the deal. But I try to see what other avenues can we take before we get to that point.
Man, this is great. Well, everything I've heard about Lexington has been an eye-opener for myself. And as an investor, you always want to know where the next markets are that others maybe haven't quite cannibalized. I would like to say you have iBuyers out there, you have institutions out there, and it just seems like Lexington is, more of a local investors market. You're not having as much outside interest, but that may be an opportunity for our Roofstock investors to come out to Lexington.
It definitely is. Lexington is like one of those well-kept secrets that is slowly starting to trickle out to the rest of the nation. And what we're seeing as far as the outside interest is high, simply because what you can buy out on the West Coast, you can buy multiple properties for that same price right here in Kentucky.
That's amazing. Well, just to kind of close it out, and then we'll ask how people can get in contact with you. But the probably the top statistic I always love to look at is the census data, and it shows that 54% of those in Fayette County, which is Lexington and some of the surrounding cities, is the ownership rate is 54%. The national average is 64%. So you have a lot more renters in the area. And then all these economic drivers, such as, the colleges, the younger, the younger renter base that's, graduating and needing somewhere to move into once they get a job locally, and all the job growth. That, to me, those are the win-win opportunities that, again, there's going to be more opportunity, even with a low supply that you have. There's going to be more to pick from, because I think our buyers can be more competitive in the market to find properties in that 7 to 9% cap rate, like what you're talking about. Because a lot of other markets, that's kind of the unicorn that is fictitious. There used to be a 7 to 9% cap rate, but those have been compressed and pretty much disappearing at this point.
Yeah.
Glad you could be with us today, Daniel. Maybe give us an idea if somebody wanted to reach out and talk to you a bit more about what's happening in Lexington, or maybe have a conversation before they make an offer. How can they get in touch with you?
Best way to get in touch with me is either by phone or text. You can text me at 859-797-4007, or you can email at daniel@makekyhome.com.
That is awesome. Thanks so much for joining us today. I am enlightened now, and I'm more than excited to see what kind of activity we get with you and start to drive some offers to you. So thanks for being on today, Daniel. We really appreciate it.
Mark, thank you again.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening and participating in today's podcast on Lexington, Kentucky. Daniel brought a lot of good information, so we hope that it's useful for you. And we look forward to having you on next time. Happy investing.